Welcome back to Sporthawk. Today, my guest is an absolute cracker. Over 600 appearances as a player, 5 promotions to his name, time as a coach and manager, and now he's a scout of a top Premier League club. So welcome to the show, Chris Hargreaves. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing, mate?
Great to be here. Thank you so much. Great intro. I'll put a £10 in the post for you.
Cheers. So anyway, Chris, let's go back to the start of your career. Take me back. Where did your football career begin?
Well, it was in the parks and anywhere that I could kick a ball about in Cleethorpes. And if you haven't heard of Cleethorpes, it's next to Grimsby. If you haven't heard of Grimsby, it's near Hull. So yeah, like all of us, you get a ball for a present at some point, and then you're at the park for 10 hours a day kicking a ball about. But when it became more serious, I signed youth forms at Grimsby, but then also at Everton. I was scouted by Everton, which was quite unusual back in 85, and signed for them as a schoolboy. And yeah, all my holidays and all weekends were spent driving to Belfield to train and to represent Everton, which was great. So it was sort of as soon as I can remember, I kicked a ball about.
Was there a moment that you felt like, okay, actually, I can do this professionally now?
Well, the big head in all of us is, pretty much straight away. I thought, I'm not bad. I'm because obviously, normally the process would be you're one of the best players or the best player at school and county, and then representing other clubs. So, I felt that when I was scoring a fair few goals as a young player, it was quite positive that I would, what I thought, that I'd become a player.
Yeah, was there a bit of a transition in that period as you were kind of coming through the youth ranks about how you played and how you saw yourself as a player?
Oh, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. It's a great question. I think most players, when they start out, can transition into another position. I was a centre forward. I was quick. I was sharp. I was hungry to score goals. I was obsessed with scoring goals. 50 goals for youth teams was like a normal occurrence because that's all I wanted to do. And as the injuries come, or the perhaps the combination of loads of different things, confidence, different managers, your positions change, you slow down. I became a winger, then midfielder, defensive midfielder. I mean, I was going back and back and back. I mean, other than the goalkeeper, I've probably played in most positions. But it was starting out predominantly as a striker.
I feel like probably that is quite often when you have a more talented player at a younger age. Often they just end up front because they want the best player up front. And then I suppose you have to adapt as you get older, don't you, really?
Yeah, you do. You find your place as well. And I signed for a couple of clubs as a winger, and then I felt like I could be more influential in the centre of the park. So I sort of spoke to the manager and said, I think this is where I see myself. But, as a young lad, you play wherever. If he asks you to play up front, you do it. And because when I started playing professional football, there was only 2 subs. You didn't want to be that sub. You didn't want to be the one of the 2 subs. So you played anywhere, really.
I mean, throughout your career, you did play for some pretty strong personalities. I think it's probably fair to say. Was there anyone, especially early on in your career, that kind of gave you, that had the biggest influence on you at a young age?
Yeah, I think that obviously I had a very unusual and interesting start because I was essentially scouted by the Grimsby Town manager at the time, which was Mike Lyons, who was an Everton legend. And he said, look, I'm taking you back to Everton because I see you playing in the Premier League. So I sort of followed, and I went back with Everton. Everton back then had played Grimsby in the reserves, and there was old players like Adrian Heath, Paul Bracewell that were playing in that game. And I went back on that coach, back to Everton that night from Grimsby, signing there. So it was a surreal experience. So Mike saw that ability in me to be able to play at a high level, but I couldn't find the right balance of being away from home at such a young age and it was very different then. The sort of nurturing back when you were now when you're a player, and the support mechanisms are outstanding. Whereas back then it was pretty rough and ready staying in places when I was younger. So I ended up sort of saying no to a apprenticeship at Everton, which seems madness now. But my long answer to your question is that those influential managers, the one that I experienced first was my first manager, was Alan Buckley, and he was a hard taskmaster. He was a brilliant manager, fantastic, and he'll go down in folklore as a Grimsby Town hero. Took them up 2 divisions, so my first 2 years as a pro, promotion is incredible. But I was such a effervescent, outgoing character that it maybe manifested itself in something different to him. He thought I was probably a bit cocksure, a bit full of myself, but I was basically a humble lad that just wanted to do well, but maybe was a little bit overconfident. And there was a few clashes, and I think that had I have had the experience I have now, I'd have just gone with it and accepted it. But EA was quite hard on me back then.
What were you carrying early on that most people wouldn't see, like other young players at the time?
Obviously, you were fighting to get into a first team squad. There was no 21s. There was only 2 substitutes. You had a real small pool of opportunity to be able to get into a first team. Otherwise, you didn't make it as a player. You were done, and you had to find a profession and earn money elsewhere. So that's the first obstacle, that you had no pathway to further your development. 21s, the whole point of it is for those late maturers to see that development come through, and in the end to flourish and become, really good players. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is obviously not for the faint-hearted. It's dealing with men who are fighting for their contracts and professions. And I was a 17-year-old kid trying to play in a first team with the manager on me, the players full on, and limited resources. I'd never been in a gym or picked up a weight. That was never even in fact, on my debut, I think there was still a small bottle of whiskey on the table, and the warm-ups were pretty much I think I did some kick-ups in the centre circle. Yeah. I'm making it sound like it was in black and white, but it just shows you how far the game's progressed.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear your perspective as well, because I talked to Lloyd Owusu last week, obviously Brentford legend, and played for Slough Town, and he was very open about his experiences playing for Slough, and how he was quite a big lad anyway, so he kind of felt like it was kind of easy for him to start playing with men because he had that strength, he had that pace. Yeah. Did you feel the same way when you played for Grimsby?
I did. Yeah, Lloyd's a top lad. I haven't spoken to him for a while, but yeah, we've got a connection with Brentford, so. He's a top player, top lad. I was the same. I was ready at 17 to play, and I physically capable. And I think that there's sliding doors moments, and maybe with a different. It was, it's on both. It's on manager and player. I mean, Alan Buckley always used to say, "You'll be the club's first £1 million player," and in the end, I ended up going to Hull for. I think that there was a crowd fund of 50 grand and some other financial transfer, but it just shows you that it can shift quite quickly, because we were, and Lloyd would be the same. Any player would be the same. When a club gets promotions quickly, you have to battle with the players that they're signing, and we were signing players like Clive Mendonca, and I was trying to get past or near him, and he was like a goal machine. So. It's just a journey, isn't it? You just got to roll with it and try and do the best you can.
How did you deal with that ambition, with that competitive spirit as you were getting up the leagues? Did you find it difficult, or did you kind of, every time you got promoted and every time there was a new challenge or a new player that came in, how did you usually deal with that?
Well, the classic one as you get older is pre-season training. Your arms come out further and you say, "You're not coming past me." That's the mentality you have to have. So. And it's a bit of an old school one where, you put someone through their paces and you show them your aggression. And you have to survive, don't you? You have to have that determination and will to want to keep pushing yourself. I don't know many players that I have played with or still talk to now, and you know the big network of players and coaches, etc. Enough is never enough. So not many are happy with what they did, and I still remain that way. And it's so bizarre. And a lot of people say to me, "Yeah, you're mad. You know, you don't appreciate what," and I do appreciate it. I appreciate the career I had because I played football. Hell, I mean, wow, what a career to be able to do. But I wanted to play for England, wanted to play in the Premier League, you know, wanted to stay at a high level for my career. Didn't do it, and that remains a real problem. So there's a sort of love, not a hate, but a love of the game, but an annoyance and frustration of what you didn't do.
That's a really interesting take, and one that I haven't really heard many people talk about is how you feel about your career afterwards. So thank you for sharing that. What was it then that motivated you throughout your career?
Just wanting to maybe make the family proud. I know it's a bit cheesy, but it's what we all do, isn't it? You know, you want to do something with your life. You want to, I suppose, achieve. I think the achievement, and I say this to a lot of players I come across now, younger players, the best thing about football and the best thing, you know, obviously we're kicking a ball about every day. It's fantastic. But you look back and can you achieve something? The money's all well and good, but there's only so far you can go with the money. You can have loads of great holidays, but you're not going to be able to look back and say, I did this or I did that. If you can combine both, wow, you've got it made. But it was trying to achieve something, trying to play a certain amount. I think for every player at the start of the season, no matter what level you're at, you think, I need to play as many games as possible. I want to play 40, 50, 60 games. That's the first. The second one would be, can we get in the playoffs? Can we get promotion? Can I get player of the year? Can we, you know, so you're leaving some type of legacy at a club, or you might be remembered at a club for trying your best and putting the shift in.
Were you motivated by new players coming in as well, or did it not affect you?
It didn't affect me. I embraced it, really. I think that if there were good players and you knew they were good players and you knew that maybe he was either coming in to replace you or to enhance the squad, you have to embrace it. You have to embrace it. And because you're all in the same boat, aren't you? And players that come into a club are judged pretty quickly. And how are you judged? You're judged with your performance. It doesn't matter what type of character you are in the first instance. If you're producing the goods on the field, you'll be welcomed into that squad. And yeah, everything else follows. Then you work out the character and what type of person they are. But yes, I think it's a motivation. I think it is in any walk of life. If someone comes into your workplace as the newbie, you know, you weigh them up, don't you? You sort of character assess them to work out what they're about.
Yeah, and obviously you can learn from them as well.
For sure you can. I mean, I learned from so many brilliant players and all different types of players. I remember I made my debut or first couple of games with Gary Birtles, and he was one of the country's first £1 million players, and he just had that steel and that sort of edge of calmness when receiving the ball and produced moments in big games under pressure. Promotion moments, goals in big games. And that's probably the first time I saw someone that was, wow, he's got some serious stature on the pitch. So, yeah, you definitely learn from players like that.
When did you start seeing yourself as a leader throughout your career?
I would say I saw myself as a leader when I was younger through the age groups because I was the sort of talisman scoring the goals. But then as you were a young player getting into teams, I admire the young lads that are captains straight away because that takes some doing. And I think that maturity levels vary with different people and opportunity. And also, I suppose, more often than not, as you play in those central areas, you have a better chance of becoming that leader and captain. And when I signed for, I think probably Plymouth/Northampton, I became more of an integral sort of engine room player where I would be a talker, I'd be a shouter and a baller, namely so that everyone else would do my running, to be honest. And but that was when you become a bit of a leader as you get older.
So do you think it progressed and changed as you went to different clubs?
Definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, you mature as a human being, and as a player, you're confident in your own ability. I think for the first few years, you're just trying to concentrate on your own performance. You're probably not even thinking about what everyone else is doing. And once you have that maturity, and for me, playing in the middle of the park, I think that then you can see everything. You can dictate to people, and you can have an effect. To be honest, as we all have, I'd have a load of stinkers, but I've been good with my voice in some games, and it's probably worth that to get the performance from the other players by dictating the tempo, or maybe telling the lads to slow down in some instances. So I'm just making excuses, really. You just shout, aren't you? Let's be honest. Yeah.
No, that's a really interesting point. And I want to touch on your managerial career and your coaching career a little bit later on. What do you think that you learned from that experience of being a player, a leadership figure on the pitch or maybe off the pitch? What did you learn about those with those experiences that you took on to being a coach and a manager?
Yeah, good question. I think that when you are a captain and a leader, I mean, it always made me laugh. I was voted on a poll. I can't remember what it was. It might have been 5 or 10 people, but I'm joking. It was a poll on Northampton ex-players, and it was one of the best captains, and I was listed in there, and I'd never captained the club. But it shows you that because of that vocal sort of outlook. But I think the answer to the question is that you're more aligned and closer to the manager and the staff, because you go in to talk to the manager, you go in to talk to the first team coach, the assistant manager about players' performances, tactical awareness, or the form of the team. And you feel the responsibility, and definitely as a captain, you feel the responsibility of the fans and the club and the performances, and you take a lot of weight on your shoulders. Don't get me wrong, you're filled with pride when you make your first debut, as I say, as a captain. But I think it comes with responsibility, because you know what it means to the manager, the staff, and the fans. So I think you take your football a little bit more seriously when you have that armband.
Yeah, and let's talk about something that was a little bit later on in your career. Obviously, you're very well known for your promotion record. There's 5 promotions in your career. One of them, I think a special one, was playing at Wembley for Torquay in 2009. What does that day mean to you now?
It means a lot. It means a lot. I mean, obviously, being promoted when I was a young player a couple of times in succession, that meant that everything else was, you were hunting for that, and it takes a long time to ever get a promotion. I'd been in, I think, maybe 5 or 6 playoff losses, which is tough to take. So it just shows you how hard it is to get promotion. But it meant a lot. We'd lost, believe it or not, the year before we'd lost in the trophy final in front of 50,000, and then a week prior to that we lost to our rivals Exeter. 10 minutes to go, 3-1 up, and we managed to throw the game away and lost to get to the final. So the following season, everyone was on a mission to do it. I was a captain of the club. There was no doubt in my mind that we would do it, even though it was through the playoffs. But yeah, it was a joyous moment, seeing the fans and playing at the National Stadium, no matter what level, is big.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people there. Walking out onto the pitch, did it feel different to a normal game? Obviously, you are playing at Wembley. You're playing at one of the most historic grounds in the world. Did you see it as a different game? Did you feel different walking out onto the pitch, especially as the captain?
Oh, definitely. Without a shadow of a doubt, you get that, and I'm, players that have played at a high level than me and playing cup finals regularly will say the same. The first 10 minutes is that sort of dry mouth situation where you're trying to catch your breath, and it was a hot day for us in particular that day, and you're just thinking about the ramifications of not winning, which is not an option. So yeah, everything crosses your mind, but more often than not, it's family. It's you want to make them proud and not let them down, and the fans, because they're paying the money. There's lots of things that go through your mind.
What is the approach that you took before that game? If you can take us back there, what approach did you take when talking to the other players? Because of course you're gonna get the butterflies, you're gonna be feeling excited, nervous. How do you approach that? How did you approach that personally?
Yeah, good question. I remember speaking to the boys in the hotel before the game, and I was so confident that we would do it. I was saying to the boys, "This is your day. Don't even doubt it for a second. You're going in there to win the game and walk up those steps and get the trophy. That's the only thing in your mind. It's going to happen. So, don't worry about it. Just go and act and play well." And it was sort of, I don't know, maybe it did definitely relaxed a lot of the players, because I remember Chris Robertson saying afterwards, saying he was so full of belief that we would do it that everyone believed it. And that's the same in lots of games. Don't get me wrong, you don't win some. And I unfortunately couldn't play the following year with Oxford when we got to the final. I'd played in the run-in and gone back as captain of Torquay to captain of Oxford within the same week, just to try and help the boys and the squad and the staff go over the line, because it's very difficult. It's like the Championship in that sense of being so difficult to get out of.
Yeah. Definitely. As a Saints fan, I can definitely testify.
Well, exactly. I mean, how many playoffs hells have you been through?
Oh well, obviously the last one was a good one against Leeds. But the sort of thing that I was going to talk to you about actually is because obviously I have never been a player. I am just someone who talks about football, but someone who cares about it a lot. And I think Southampton fans, I think we are quite hard done by, to be honest. And I think every fan of every club would say the same thing. But we have been through a fair amount, including the playoffs. I mean, that playoff final, I think that was a special one against Leeds, because Leeds were definitely the favourites for that game. Yeah. And to be honest, I think Leeds were probably a better team that season. They had some really, really good players. But I wondered, from your perspective, from a player's perspective, after a game like that, is it relief or is it joy that you've got promoted?
It's relief. It's relief. Yeah, it is more than anything. Because I think the importance of it, and it's. I don't remember any other feeling than looking at that referee going to blow that whistle, and I said, "How long left?" And he said, "I'm going to blow it," and I said, "I love you." He just started laughing, and that's relief, isn't it? That's relief, or maybe it's a mixture of both. But any player or captain is the same. It doesn't matter what level it is. It's all important, and that's why I look at a lot when I commentate or look at games now. I love this fact that it's a story, so you can be going to any game in the country, Southend, Arsenal, Liverpool, Bognor Regis. It's as important to the people of that area as anywhere in the world. And that's the thing, that being a Saints fan, the passion is all consuming. And so that's why I always, have a respect for the fans. I know it's not always reciprocated, and I've come into a lot of stick at various clubs, but that's life.
I mean, fans are famously fickle, aren't they?
Well, you go there, and there can be lots of different reasons where you go into a stand and don't behave like you normally would as a normal human being. Everyone goes to that game as a normal person, but it does something to you, doesn't it? Football, where you suddenly lose the plot, and sometimes get a little bit carried away.
I'm still trying to explain this to my partner, because she's yet to come to a Southampton game and she hasn't quite understood it yet. So I'm hoping to take her to the first game of the season, and then we'll see what sort of lunatic we can get out of her.
Take her to a winnable game, and then she'll see the best side of you.
Well, we've got Wrexham first game of the season.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, it's it's at home. It's at home, but it's going to be an interesting one. I think the promoted sides from League One, they've got some good chances to do a bit of damage I think Birmingham, they've made some big signings
Yeah,
already.
yeah, they got some
And
firepower. Yeah.
yeah, and Wrexham. What was the third team that got? Do you know the third team that got promoted? Is it like
Good question.
everyone's talking about Wrexham and Birmingham.
No, I'd have to have a look. I don't
Not
know. I
sure.
mean, that's the problem when you're looking at different leagues. I mean, my eyes are just constantly focused on European leagues, national teams in younger age groups, and sometimes when you're at a particular club, that league is the massive focus, and it's always been like that all the way through. But yeah, the clubs you've mentioned, Birmingham and Wrexham. I mean, we covered a lot of Wrexham with in the National League and their story and the actual owners and the what it did for the area is incredible. A lot of people have their own views on the money and how unfair it might be, but you've got to say for the community and for the fans of Wrexham, for the whole area, absolutely magnificent, superb story.
Yeah, what do you think? Let's talk a little bit more about that. Like, what do you think about the teams like Wrexham and Birmingham? Obviously, I think you can kind of understand it from two perspectives, right? I think Wrexham, they're doing a particularly good job at associating and keeping the club associated with the surrounding areas and the importance of the club to this town. I think it's a town, isn't it? But what do you think in general about the way that football's going in terms of the amount of money that's being spent in teams, and especially it is going down these lower leagues. A lot of I think it's going to happen more often where business people and celebrities will think, do you know what, we can do that. We can do what Wrexham have done. We can do what Birmingham are doing.
That's right. It's really difficult to sometimes not understand both sides of the story, but for example, Birmingham's a massive club, huge club, and unless you're another fan of another Midlands club, you see Birmingham as a big club in a decent league, don't you? I think the problem comes when there are owners that maybe aren't seen, and there isn't a transparency to the fans. I mean, that club has had its turmoil over the last few years, but as a football club, for the size of the football club to be in its league, I think is a good thing. I think the leagues need big clubs, but the spending of the money, it does bring the question of fairness in. If you can spend 12, 15 million pounds on a striker in League One,
I think that's where the line becomes a bit blurry, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's the same in every league. Let's be honest. I know we've got financial fair play now, but yeah, it's an odd. It must seem an oddity to teams in that league that can't afford any transfer fee. Never mind that amount, because it's probably, well, it isn't. It's not a problem. It's not a level playing field, which what it does, it turns fans further off from the connection to a football club, doesn't it? It seems further away. You know, it's always been a game for the fans and for the people, but when you're talking about those types of figures, it just seems so unrealistic.
Yeah, similar to like with the Club World Cup as well. You know, those sort of numbers that are being put up for the winners are numbers that teams in the lower leagues just couldn't even dream of making that much money from 7 games of football. So it's an interesting thing. I do also think there's a fair amount of like jealousy in it as well. Obviously, you know, if someone or a club has something that you don't have and that they've got more of a chance, you are going to feel a bit bummed about it, aren't you? So I suppose it's a difficult thing to control, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But what you can't argue with is the story and the fact that you do have to get over the line and get promoted. You can have all the money in the world, but you still don't do it sometimes. And we've seen many clubs in world football, no names mentioned, that have spent billions of pounds and got nowhere. So you still have to produce. You still have to galvanise the squad, get the team spirit right, get promotion. So yeah, good luck to both of the clubs. But going back to the fan connection, I think that's something that I've always been aware of as a player, so that you feel like you're connected a little bit with the fans of the club you're playing for.
Is there a club that you feel particularly connected to throughout your career?
I thought about this a bit, and I can honestly say that I could walk back into all of the clubs I've played for and walk in there with a smile on the face. I think it's different as a manager. When I took over at Torquay, I was first team coach at Bournemouth with Eddie and JT, and the staff and the players were brilliant. We had a great time, promoted to the Championship. But I wanted to be a manager, and I chose probably one of the toughest jobs in the country at the time, 6 points adrift. The owner, Thea, God bless her, had taken her money out in the first week I joined. She said, I can't do it anymore. And everything aligned badly. So, yeah. And then it tarnishes your, not relationship, because I've got a great relationship with the fans, but your memory of the club and their memory of you. Because a year earlier, I'd lifted the trophy on the steps of Wembley for that club as captain. And then suddenly I'm with the club when they're relegated, albeit, we gave it a good shot.
That's a very, very good point in terms of, I think as a manager, the connection with the fans is different, and it is a lot more up and down because you are seen as fully responsible for the way that the team plays. And that, I'm sure, is not the case, but you are the person that all of the blame goes on.
Yeah, it does. And you take that on when you take the job. Of course you do. I mean, it's not for the faint-hearted. And I would stay in the office until 10, 11 o'clock at night, racking my brain as to how we could get better. My wife said I didn't really focus on anything in the whole time I was in these roles, which is crazy. And then taking the Yeovil job, I probably took a similar role on. I think the budget was lower than when Darren had it, and Darren struggled in the last year, Darren Saul. But so many things go on off the field that the fans don't see, and at that particular club, it was definitely a strange time, that's for sure. Let's just say that. But you just got to give it your best, and you've got to walk out with your head held up. And when I got the phone call saying I was sacked, I just faced it up and went to see the boys the next day and shook everyone's hand and said, listen, thanks for trying your best. For me, not meant to be. But the fine line between 8 of those draws being 5, 6 or 7 wins is so minimal that it then can give you that platform to get going again. And I took that gamble, having left Bristol Rovers to become a manager. And I think to any coach now out there, I would say, don't jump at everything. You do your due diligence on the club in question. Go and ask them every single question you can. How much money are you going to have to spend? What can you do in that role? What's the infrastructure like? Because if you don't do that, you honestly might as well go down the casino and throw red or black on it, because that's the fact of it. So that's a lesson that you learn as a manager for sure. But the buzz of it, being in the technical area, having the responsibility, wanting to win, that's why you do it.
Did you always feel like you wanted to be a manager?
Yeah, 100%. And you have to adapt when you get the sack or when you leave a club, and you take different roles. And my future might be back in management. I'm in recruitment at Brighton now and absolutely love it. And, that may be for me for the rest of my career, because I see a big value in it to a football club, especially a club like Brighton that have been relentless and fantastic with their recruitment. So, who knows what the future holds. But it hasn't put me off, even though it's difficult.
You've got that. You still got that itch to scratch.
Well, maybe, but as I say, I'm what I would say at the moment, I'm so focused on the role that I'm doing and enjoying it that might change. And in 6 months' time, if we have the same conversation, it might be no way, never again. At the moment, I think we all say that about anything in life, don't we? You never say no to an opportunity. But I think that when you start working for a club with the values of Brighton and the staff and the infrastructure, you feel pretty connected to it. And as I say, there's some brilliant people there, and it's a club that punches above its weight. And has had a track record that is second to none.
Yeah, Brighton is definitely something that I want to talk about in a bit, because I'm absolutely intrigued by the club. I think from as I said, Southampton fan, they are in the exact same position that we were in the mid 2010s, and I am absolutely jealous of the place that they're in now, and I definitely want to get onto that. But before we do that, one person that I would like to kind of touch on, who you did spend some time coaching with, is Eddie Howe. And Eddie Howe, I think, has had a pretty remarkable managerial career. What did you learn from Eddie Howe in your time working with him?
A lot. I think that Eddie retired young, didn't he? Because he had an injury. He was a good player when he was younger. His career might have been very different. But when Paul Groves had got the sack, I was employed by Paul to take the under-21s, and then Eddie came in during the League One season when we were struggling a little bit. And as soon as he came in, you could tell that there was an affinity with him and the club. And having spoken to him later on about it, he said that he was so, thankful that he got the approach back to go back to the club. We'd come across each other in our careers. I'd played, having played almost 700 games, you're bound to come across a few players in your time. And I'd come across Eddie and Jason before. And I'd always admired the fact that he was connected to that club so strongly. And when he joined, he sort of weighed up the staff and the squad. And I remember him saying to me, I'm going to come over and watch training for every afternoon with the 21 to see how you work. And he did that. And then, after a week or so, we had a chat in the office, and he said, I know you're a good guy, and I see you're a decent coach, so I'd like you to stay at the club with me. And my title ended up being first team coach, and it was probably 21 stroke first team, where you'd take sessions on a rotation with Eddie and with Jason. But his attention to detail, his humility as a person, and his understanding of the game tactically is right up there. I mean, I've said a few times that England, they must have approached him, and if they haven't, I don't know why not, but I'm sure they will have done and had those conversations. But he's a very, very good tactician, and to me also a top guy.
Could you always tell that he was going to be a top manager?
Yeah, he's just got that steely determination. I don't think he thought he would be a manager. He said that a few times in different interviews. But Jason and Eddie work really well together. They're great friends. I know that there was a spell when Eddie left Bournemouth and JT took over that was obviously a period where they perhaps were tested. But it just works. Both good coaches, both good people. But I think that the misconception about Eddie being a nice guy, he is, don't get me wrong, he's a great lad and he'd do anything for anybody. He can be as ruthless as anybody, if not the most ruthless, and in a good way. And have a conversation and front it up with somebody, no matter what stature you are in the game. And I think that is what a player wants. Sometimes you have to be told the brutal truth, good or bad. And that's the experience I have from Eddie, of being, very honest, top coach. Still message him now when he's done well and when he's had big games. And it makes me laugh, because often when you come across some certain staff members or you're at different football clubs, I used to say to people, I said, I've sent an email, not heard back for 2 or 3 days. Is it a problem? I said, I text the manager, Eddie Howe, and he might be in the changing room at Man United. I get a text back within 10 minutes. It's
a bit of a flex as well.
A little bit. Yeah, exactly that. So, but I think that he fell into it more accidentally than he might have thought initially. But wow, is he made the most of it, and he proved his worth.
Yeah. How would you say those experiences shaped your approach to management when you went on to be a full-time manager? Very different,
because Eddie survived in the season with Bournemouth with that camaraderie, and there was a few players that he could rely on, experienced players. And if you have that, you've got a chance. And our scenarios were very different. I think with the attention to detail and the methodology and philosophy, yeah, similar, very similar, the way we want to see the game played. But I can tell you, when the mud and bullets are flying, you can chuck your philosophy and your tactical thought process out the window, because you've just got to win games by hook or by crook. And usually budget dictates, and if you can't get the players in, it makes it difficult. So yeah, I take a lot from him, and I still do now. And what he's doing, or has done at Newcastle, has been excellent, hasn't it?
Yeah, honestly, I think it was a bit of a surprise of how well he did. And I don't want to say that to like diminish him. I just think that when he got that move to Newcastle, it was a bit of a surprise, because I think they were looking at the time, there was rumours about, like Jose, or maybe like, because they just had the new ownership, right? And when they went for Eddie Howe, there was quite a lot of negativity around it, because he had done so well at Bournemouth, and then I think he'd had a couple bad seasons. I think they might have got relegated, or they'd been close to relegation, but before that they'd been punching above their weight, similar to teams like Brighton or Brentford, and they'd done a really good job. They just had a bad season, and he lost his job, didn't he? Or he left his job. So I think that move to Newcastle was a sort of surprising one. From my opinion, I thought it was surprising, but actually that has paid off even better than I think that they would imagine.
Definitely. The bosses at Newcastle made an incredible decision and appointment, and it might have come with an amount of bravery, because, as you say, they expected a so-called, in brackets, bigger name at the time. But the thing with Eddie is, and anyone who will have done their homework on Eddie, which the recruitment staff at Newcastle would have done, is that when you're at a massive club, which Newcastle is, and those players need support and they need detail about their specific position, you won't get anyone better. So if you're playing in one of his teams, you will have to know exactly what your role is as an individual and in the team. And technically, you will get better, 100%. So it ticks a lot of boxes when you're a player needing a little bit of that, playing in front of 50,000 every week. It's a massive club, isn't it? And the pressure's on there. So those little percentages of detail that will help you have meant that those players at Newcastle have just gone way better than they could have imagined.
Definitely. I mean, look at players like Jacob Murphy. Like he was almost took people time to adjust to how well he was playing last year and the numbers he was putting up. Something that I've been really sort of impressed about with Eddie as well is that not only has he come in and yes, they've spent a lot of money and they've signed players like Bruno Guimaraes and Joe Linton and a bunch of different guys, Botman, Livramento, loads of great players. But actually, when he first came in, they were lower down in the table. They were in the relegation zone. I think they were a couple points off being safe. And does that take a different style of management to get out of that position to where he is now? And now, to be honest, they're a Champions League club. They are fighting for Champions League. They could be looking at a title charge next year. You never know.
Yeah. Oh no, you definitely take it on. It's a different approach when you're down at the bottom and the pressure is just ramped up and it's huge. And I think it takes its toll on a manager, and it has done on Eddie for sure. He feels the responsibility so much. You can tell in his post-match reactions when he feels it when the team have lost. But having been in the job a long time, I think he knows that you get the ups and downs, and he's got a good support mechanism. And I think as well, when, and he'll laugh if he ever watches this, but when you're a little bit more financially secure, you've got a little bit more of a buffer. So that you feel quite secure and safe. But yeah, it's still about achievement for Eddie. And all the managers, you learn from all the managers that you come across. Our Jim Smith, the Bald Eagle, who was a legend at Derby, at Oxford, Martin Allen at Brentford, and we had a team of lads who were written off that we should have got promoted to the Championship, lost in the playoffs to Sheff Wednesday. But Paul Buckle at Torquay, he managed to get all those boys together and produce a tremendous team. All the managers I've played under, Colin Calderwood, you take something from everybody.
Well, let's talk about some other very successful clubs at the moment at Brighton. And you are now working there as a scout.
Yes.
I believe you're working as an academy scout, looking at players within the UK, is it mostly?
The title's under 21 recruitment manager, and it's essentially scouting, looking at players all across Europe at various times, international teams, and looking to unearth potential undervalued talent and good people, and that's the ethos of the club.
What's the number one attribute for a player that you would look for when you're scouting?
Obviously, you've got to have a USP, haven't you? You've got to have that little bit of X factor, and it could be defensive transitions, it could be stature, it could be 1v1 or finishing. But I think for any scout or any person in my role, that sort of immediate reaction off the ball and that sort of the mannerisms of how you hold yourself as a player, they go a long way. I think that's the sort of player that you can work with, and any manager that Fabian works with has got to display a lot of these characteristics, otherwise they won't get in the team. And I look at someone like Jack Hinchelwood, who's been able to adapt into 3, 4, 5 different positions and show calmness in all of those, as well as steel. So he's got both the ability and the aggression combined with the adaptability to play in different positions. And he's a great example of, he's obviously a homegrown player, which is the primary focus for an academy. Our job is to either rule players out because ours are better, and that's sometimes as good as signing them, or enhancing a squad to try and enable them to be, essentially Premier League players eventually.
Yeah, I think a lot of football fans would assume that they could become a scout because we can all play Football Manager. And I tell you, I've had some great careers on Football Manager, signed some really good players. But how difficult is it? And can you talk me through what the process is like about being a scout in a top club that is doing so well in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think, without going into our particular mode of recruitment, but I would just say that it's definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, a challenge at times. You're doing long distances. Let me first put it on record how lucky we are to be in football, watching football and talking about football. So that's a given, I'm going to cover that straight away in case people are shouting, you're watching football. I get that. But what I would say is it's thousands of hours and miles at ridiculous times all over Europe, all over this country, and you can more often than not be on a freezing cold AstroTurf or ground somewhere in the country late at night, returns. So that's the sort of mud and bullets of it. The good parts of it are seeing a player that you feel has got the attitude and application and ability to play at the top, and then seeing that process through if they are signed to a essentially a Premier League level. And it's very, very difficult to get to that level. That's what I would say. Any recruitment scout or team would say the same. Certainly in the age groups that I look at the moment, very, very difficult to get from that place to be a Premier League footballer, but you have to believe it to get there.
Yeah. When you see a player that you've scouted, is it often just a feeling that they are good enough at least to make it to the under 21 level, or at least have a chance of making it as a pro in a top league?
Yeah, you do obviously get a feeling, and that's the basis of scouting, and it'll be the same in 30 years, and it was the same 30 years ago. Most clubs now have certain data levels that a player might need to have got to before the subjective part of it. But essentially, at our level, we are still looking at players up and down the country, and the more positive reports, the better. And it's the same for every club. Every club's looking for good players, but every club's also looking for the leaders and the characters that can enhance a changing room.
Yeah, football is very data driven nowadays, isn't it? And that has been successful in lots of different clubs. Is there still a place for the eye test? And
Yeah, 100%. Combination of the both is key, because the data won't tell you about the character, and the character won't give you the data. So you have to do both, and that's the skill of it. And I think that we are trying to compete with the biggest clubs, and the owner has supported the club so well, both financially and emotionally, and created a fantastic environment for football. But it comes with extreme hard work, vision, financial outlay, and the fact that the club wants to stay there. And so that relentlessness continues year on year on year, and it has to be like that. And every other club's like that. It's a vicious world in football, isn't it? As we all know. So you've just got to be competitive all the time. And so that's why, everyone is working the socks off to continue the great work that's already been done.
I'm curious about that feeling that you get when a player comes through the academy and makes their debut for the first team. Is it a feeling of pride? Is it a feeling of being a little bit nervous? Are you nervous that they're going to do a good job, and you know how good that player is and they've earned that shot? How do you feel when an academy player that you have worked with makes it into the first team?
Oh, obviously, it goes without saying. It's a tremendous feeling. A lot of scouts that I've been at Brighton 2 years or over 2 years, but previously to that, scouts have seen players come through and all the way through the age groups to become Premier League footballers, and they say it's hard to describe, but the feeling of pride is immense. And I also think when I stopped playing, I was about 38, something like that anyway, and I started coaching at Exeter as a part-time coach. I was living in Exeter but playing at Torquay as captain. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I started coaching at Exeter. My first group, I still am proud of having a small, minute hand coaching those boys for 3 or 4 years, because I had Matt Grimes, Ollie Watkins, Matty J, Christy Pym. They've all gone on to have brilliant careers at various levels, but driving the boys to Everton from Exeter, 5 hours away on a minibus. I'd just played the day before as captain of the club, and I was knackered. But I was driving this minibus, running out of fuel, all the lads messing about in the back. But I don't know why I'm doing the driving thing, but it still makes me happy now to see that Ollie and Matt, I think he played the most consistent championship games. I think he's the record for doing that without injury. Ollie obviously goes without saying. I'm so proud of that. And I was a part-time coach then. But the small details that I tried to add, even if we were playing a little bit of head tennis, so 2-touch, you're playing head tennis, it could be a row of cones or a little net. You got to win. You got to try and find a way to win in that game. And it helps your touch, it helps your aggression when you're at the net, finishing, the accuracy. That's what I wanted to add to those boys as a player. And I don't keep in touch with the boys now because they don't need to speak to me, and I don't need to speak to them. We've got different lives. But what I can tell you is I'm as proud as anybody about how well they've done.
Yeah, I think Ollie Watkins is a great example as well of a player who has worked his way up through the leagues. And I know he spent time at, was it Weston-super-Mare, and then Exeter, Brentford. And he's a really good example of the graft that you need to make it at a top level, and now being linked to big teams. I know last season, I mean, he wasn't necessarily a starter for most of the season, but the year before he was incredible, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's a good player, Ollie. He's just like he was when I was coaching him. He's got that smile on his face. He never stops running. He's lively in the final third, can finish. And he is at a big club. Let's not mistake
it.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, of
massive
course.
Club. I think that what he did for England as well, the fact that he played for England, represented his country, it's an incredible story. You're spot on. It's an incredible story. I remember a mate of mine, Dean Smith, who was managing at Brentford at the time, phoned me about him and said, yeah, what do you think of Ollie Watkins? I said, well, not sure what the club are offering might get him. You might need to up it a little bit.
Yeah.
So they paid a fair whack to Exeter for him, and then he went on again and had a crazy belief in himself that he's so good. But I've seen the other side of it where he had those doubts when he was a young player and would get a little bit upset after games if it hadn't gone right. And that's the journey you're on. That's the journey all the players are on. And my son now at Aldershot, he's on the same journey. And you have the ups and downs, and you fight, and you're trying to get contracts. And that's why I get really annoyed when I see any criticism about not my lad, but players playing at a certain level, and there's criticism. Oh, I could play at that level easily. Well, could you? That's my question. It's not easy. So I've got respect to anybody all the way through the pyramids that are going out there and grafting and trying to make a career of it.
Yeah. So at Brighton then, so you obviously working in the academy, what do you think as a whole, what do you think makes that club tick, and why? Obviously, I'm not asking you to share anything in too much detail, give away any of the secrets, but what is it that makes Brighton tick at the moment, and why have they been so successful in the last couple of years?
Just consistent values around the club, future planning about staff, managers, players, and that infrastructure that's been created by Tony Bloom, which is second to none in the Premier League. So, yeah, it's set up for success, but everyone knows that to keep being successful, you have to keep asking the questions and keep searching to be better. And so there's no resting on your laurels. I think that's everyone's attitude at the club, that to remain successful, you have to work even harder the following year. And so, lots of people at the club would give you more information than I can. I can look at it from what I see as an employee, and I see a lot of people working very hard every day to keep the club successful. And I think also at Brighton, they know the journey has been so extreme, from almost going out of the league to being in the Premier League and finishing in the positions they have and gaining European football and doing all these things that at that point of going out the league might never have been imagined. You remember those times, and that can't happen. And so that gives you that determination to succeed. But yeah, the simple answer is the values around the club, the values of the players, and the camaraderie.
I think one of the biggest compliments you could pay to Brighton is that every year it seems like they sell one of their best players for ridiculous amounts of money, usually to Chelsea. And the biggest compliment I think you can pay them is that that they're always going to make the right decision in the transfer market, whether they've already done that a couple of years ago and they've had the example I'm thinking of specifically is Caicedo going to Chelsea, and then you think, Caicedo, £150 million, then Belieber comes in. Is it Belieber? Yeah, he comes in and now is just looking like an absolute monster in the league as well. So I think that's the little bit of spice that I think every club at the moment is looking for, is being able to maximise the value of your players, and then being willing, Brighton I think are willing to move on those players, but also having a backup plan and having those contingency plans in place.
Yeah, that's it. It's a model that it takes a lot of work, and I think there's successes and challenges with it. It's not all success, but I think that the search for good players is always there at every single Premier League club, and everyone's trying their best to unearth the talent, and we'll continue to do that. And as I say, I appreciate what you say about the club. It's definitely a very everyone's filled with pride when they work for any football club, but yeah, for sure, working at Brighton, I know I'm fortunate to do that, and you just try your best for the club you're at, don't you?
Yeah. How would you describe Fabian Hürzeler? I think he's a really interesting coach, and obviously he's so young. How would you describe his techniques and how successful he is? And I think obviously he had a really good first season, but quite a contrast to De Zerbi from the year before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm as an employer of the club, I I've only got huge respect for the manager of the football club. You know, the proof's in the pudding with how hard it is to be a Premier League manager, and he's determined. His attention to detail is like Eddie, second to none, and that will and determination to win every week and in training sessions and throughout the football club and be a good person is there. You know, very intelligent guy, understands the game. So, yeah, I mean, what can you say? At that age, to be like that, having coached for so long already, yeah, bodes well for him in his career.
Before we go on to, I've got some quick fire questions. I thought I'd add in some quick fire questions at the end. I just want to know, from your perspective, what would you like your legacy to be in football?
Good question. I'd say that had an impact at the football clubs he was at, and was well thought of at the clubs he was at. That's it.
You can't do much better than that, really. You can't really do much better than that.
It won't. Let me tell you, that won't be the case for a lot. But no, I'm joking. I've loved it. I've loved being a pro footballer, and I've loved being in football.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Well, in the end, then let's go on to some quick fire questions. I've got 5 questions for you, so you can go into as much detail as you like. But who is one player who you played with who deserved a bigger career?
Wow, that's a tough one. Oh, maybe Paul McGregor. I played with, lots of players have played at good levels, but Macca was a young player at Forest, scored in the European Cup, and then came to Plymouth, scored 17 goals from right wing, should have played at a higher level, and for whatever reason didn't, came to Northampton, didn't really go well for him. So yeah, great character, funny lad. Should have played higher.
Who's the most underrated manager or coach that you've worked with, as a player or as a manager or a coach yourself?
Underrated manager, I would have said Eddie previously, but now he's not underrated. He's highly rated.
Yeah, definitely.
Underrated manager, probably. I'd go back to Alan Buckley at Grimsby. For what he did at a very, in everyone else's mind, unglamorous club. And which it was a hell of an achievement to get Grimsby Town to essentially League Two, which is Championship. Incredible.
What's one thing that every player needs to understand today?
Being a true professional off the field and focusing entirely on football, because the riches and the achievement possibilities are so huge that you cannot do anything other than give it absolutely everything, 100% every day.
What would you say is the highlight of your playing career?
Making my debut at 17, because any player who makes a debut as a pro footballer, no one can ever take that away from them, regardless of whether they play one game or 700. It's a special moment for anybody. Yeah,
that's actually very similar to what Lloyd said as well. He said signing his, he said his first contract.
I'm watching it. I'm watching it.
Yeah. My final question for you is, what would you tell a 21-year-old Chris now?
Don't go into nightclubs. Please avoid them at all costs. But I would say that telling a 21-year-old now is too late. You need to be telling them at 15, 16 rather than 21.
Well, they start so young now, don't they?
Yeah, I truly believe that. But yeah, 21, I'd say go with your gut a little bit more rather than not. I think going with your gut's a big thing in life and in football.
Well, Chris, you're an absolute legend, mate. Thank you so much for this chat. I've really, really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Keep up the good work. Really enjoyed it.
Cheers, man.